What's up, everyone? Welcome back to In Our Humble Opinion. My name is Jacob Cook, and I'm very pleased to be joined, as always, by my best friend and co-host, Brantley Weatherford. Brantley, how are you
Ye-
doing today?
Yes, sir. I'm doing well, Jacob. It's another hot day in Alabama, and I got two shirts on. That's because it's cold in my house, but I'm doing great. School just started back, so for me, that means work just started back. To people who aren't teachers, you're thinking I've been working all year, but I'm back at it. So we're all in this together now.
Don't you try to act like you're one of the people right now.
Hey, I was one of the people for 2 years in the news. Y'all want to know my hours and my pay? I don't want to hear it. I've earned this position.
Oh, well, it's good to be back. Thank you all for joining us once again. We've been enjoying doing our show. We have a lot of great episodes planned. Our episode last week, we recorded a few weeks ago, but it went up last week. It's done very well so far. It's got a lot of response. It was a bit of a hot take, I must admit, but I think people are going to come around and recognize that I am ahead of my time in my thinking and will eventually come back to this and think, you know what? I think I was right about this movie.
Yeah, they're going to come back in a few years and remember this take as Mark Sanchez's butt fumble against the Patriots. And man, wow, that was a funny take. That's what it's going to be, Jacob.
Yeah, it's going to be like, that person had a really bad take, but it's not as bad as that one guy from that podcast.
Who said John Wick was trash?
That guy was an idiot. No, I mean, it is what it is.
His poor co-host.
As Colin Cowherd would say, this is Big J journalism, and I'm just America's honesty broker. So.
I don't want to hear that, Colin. All right, you're putting words in my mouth. I don't want to hear that. Big J journalism.
Well, it is great to be back. We have another very exciting episode for you today. I wanted to open up a discussion with you, Brant, about football.
Oh, yes, sir.
We are a few weeks away from the start of the season. The NFL preseason has already started at the time of this recording, but to be honest, who cares about that? And
that's exciting. It's football.
Okay.
The games are boring, I will admit. They're super boring, but it's football.
I mean, it's football, but that's all you can say about it. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to focus on something that I was recently brought to my attention that I don't think a lot of people or a lot of fans focus on unless they're yelling at them. And that, of course, is the referees.
Oh, my.
Because I recently saw an interview on talk radio, ESPN radio, of a referee that came on one of our local stations. He had been in the SEC for a long time and has since retired, but he was sort of giving some stories about what it was like being a referee in the SEC. And some of the stories that he had were just wild enough to do it.
Do what God says. That's why results happen, Jacob. That's why he was opening that. How'd that door open for you? That's how he got on the talk radio.
Sorry. It was a Robert Tilton reference. I apologize.
He was opening his mouth wide.
He was opening his mouth wide, and he was telling us a lot of great stories. And they were wild and crazy. And I wanted to kind of get your opinion of the referees in general, and then I kind of wanted to give some more details as to what he was talking about.
All right. Hit me.
Well, just give me your take first on it. First of all, have you ever thought like how the referees get into and out of the stadium? Have you ever thought about, how do they become referees? What's that process like? Have you ever considered any of that before? Because I know I haven't really before I saw this particular interview.
The only thing I've heard about them getting out of the stadium is that the minute the final whistle blows, they like dart towards the exits. That's what I heard. I never looked, and I've been to live games. I never looked to see if that's true, because when you're there and live, you don't really care about what's happening with the refs unless they're making a bad call, in your opinion. But no, do they have like an escort to the stadium?
They do. Apparently, they do have an escort from the hotel. They all apparently get dressed at the hotel. They have an escort van that takes them right up to where the players and the coaches get off, but they have to get there like in exact time before the team and the staff. So then they get unloaded as quickly as possible. And then as soon as the game ends, all of them have to run to a particular exit. It's already pre-designated which one, and then they have to get in their escort and leave as quickly as possible. And they said, and the referee who was being interviewed said, unfortunately, sometimes you're the referee who ends up in the opposite corner of where you have to go. So as soon as the whistle blows, you're literally just bolting as fast as you can to that exit so you can get out of the stadium in time.
Yeah.
And he said it's particularly dubious whenever, unfortunately, like a call was made at the end of the game that had some sort of impact. He said because people are very passionate and it can be kind of difficult to navigate through the crowd of people and get to where you need to be as quickly as possible. So, I mean, there was, little details like that were pretty eye-opening for me. But he said, like the crowd would heckle you all the time, and you had to deal with passionate fans. He never once like spoke bad about them per se, but he always would use words like passionate, but you could kind of tell what he meant by that. I just found it fascinating, like the way that they view the game that we all love, because I know that I've been at many viewing parties and other things where the referees were being blasted the entire time, and sometimes it's justifiable, but you kind of forget that they're people, I guess, and you kind of forget that like they have I don't know, you just kind of dehumanize them and you think that they aren't worth anything because they made a bad call against your team. But I don't know, it kind of put perspective in play for me.
You elevate the team and the player more than the ref. I'm going to come back to the ref because this has to do, you talk about passionate fans. When we went to Auburn, Jacob, I was doing a class, it was sports journalism, and we had to pick some book from the professor's list and write like a summary of it. And I picked one that was talking about violence in American sport, or violence in sports in general. Mm-hmm. And it got to the fan part, and that's where the passionate fan comes in. It said people who are really, really passionate fans, like in the SEC, Big Ten, all the major college football and basketball, they're fanatics of their team, which means, they want anything, they associate themselves with the team. So when you make a bad call against a team, not only is it against one particular player or that team, according to the psychology of it, the fans themselves feel that you just made a bad call against them too. You affected them as well, because they think, since they're such big fans, they got all the regalia, their jerseys and all that. They support that they're part of the team. And in a sense, yeah, they are part of the team. They support the team. So you are, in that sense, a part of the team. And that's why, have you ever lost a foot or watched your team lose a foot? I'm sure you have, Jacob. I know you have. We lose a game, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we just feel terrible. And the next day, we're kind of like sad. We start off the week sad. I know I've said in the past that, man, if Alabama, for instance, doesn't win tonight, it's going to be a bad week. Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, I mean, how I would respond is I've been an Auburn fan for 3 years now, or 4 years, so losing is a part of my regular diet. So,
well, yeah, but take for instance like Alabama and the Clemson national championship that we lost.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking.
All right, and it dampened our mood. Or the basketball Elite Four, where
that was awful.
We got screwed on the call. It was not called right. So the psychology of it is that we're so invested into our team that we ourselves believe that whatever happens with them, it negatively affects us, and that's why we have that feeling. So when you say passionate fans for the refs, they have that on top of that. That's why so many people, they bash the refs to no end. I mean, some people send death threats because of that.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's baseball a few years ago. I'm sure you heard of it. Who was it? Was it Verlander? I don't think it was Verlander. It was some pitcher. He had a perfect game. They threw it to first base. The guy was clearly out, and the ref or ump said safe, which ruined the perfect game. I mean, that guy received so many death threats and whatnot. It's insane. And that's because, psychologically speaking, based on studies, is fans of a team are so invested and connected to that team that they think they are being negatively impacted if their team loses.
Well, how I would respond to the latter part of what you just said is that I don't necessarily think that referees that make truly egregious calls shouldn't be faced with some sort of punishment, some sort of suspension, some sort of reprimandation or something. But the majority of the calls that we disagree with, I think, could go either way in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
especially in football.
Oh yeah. Pass
Like,
interference is a prime example. Sometimes.
yeah, sometimes it's given, sometimes it isn't. But I mean, like, obviously the notorious call in the Super Bowl that was clearly PI that wasn't called against the
Oh,
Saints
the uh, the
whenever
uh,
or was it in the
the,
NFC Championship game?
the championship. Yeah, NFC championship.
Saints and Rams, I think. Like, that was
Yeah.
clearly one of the most egregious calls ever that I've ever seen.
Yes, it was
And
terrible.
that referee should be held accountable for that because it was clearly a huge mistake. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, you can't pick that flag back up, and you can't undo the call once it's made. So there was nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I'm talking about more or less the not so not the biggest games of the year, but like a passing interference call that maybe was a bit harsh, maybe it wasn't, because I'm sure, and I've been told this, and this particular referee who was interviewed said as much. It's really, really hard to get everything right in just the fraction of a second you have to analyze everything and make a decision. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible to get everything right, and I think that's an unrealistic expectation as a fan.
Yeah, I think you're aside for NBA basketball because we have heard of supposed rigging in the
Yeah,
past. I mean, a ref came forward was talking about it, but yeah, for pass interference, that's a hard call to make. I mean, the benefit of the doubt, as fans, we need to understand this. The benefit of the doubt is that it's pass interference on the defense almost every time. There is offensive pass interference, um, but they're going full speed as fast as they can, real time. It's like me in the classroom. I only have two eyes, so when my students say, "You didn't see them doing this," when I call on them for doing something wrong, "You didn't see that person do that." I only have two eyes. I'm a professional. I don't see everything. I'm not a robot. These
hmm
refs aren't robots, as far as I know. These refs aren't robots. So, yeah, it's got to be tough because fans will bash you for you know holding on a first down against Panera Bread Academy. They get booed.
yeah, yeah.
Like, guys, if it happens, it happens. And holding is a call that is really easy to get right. So it's got to be tough.
Yeah, and he put it in perspective really well, I thought. He said they asked him, what's it like to be in some of like the biggest games in the SEC, like the night game in Baton Rouge, Alabama, Alabama LSU or something like that. And he said, well, just imagine this. You're in a stadium with like 60,000 people. You're on the ground, you can't hear anything. Everybody hates you, and you're trying to do the best job that you can. And I'm
You're
like,
a you're a sheep in the wolf's den.
yeah, exactly. He's like the only people you have on your team are the other 8 referees or however many there are on the team with you. That's it. The coaches don't like you. The fans certainly don't like you. And the players eventually get annoyed if you're not consistent about your calls. So
Yeah,
that's the situation that we find ourselves in every Saturday. And I'm like,
it's got to be stressful.
that's really, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. It put things in perspective for me, certainly. I'm like, I don't know how they deal with all the stress. I really don't. It's,
And on top of that, you can't hear anything like you just mentioned. Uh, For me, and maybe I'm just a strange person, but when it's really loud, it's hard for me to focus on what's going on. And that
yeah,
might
no,
be like
yeah,
some
yeah,
disability. So imagine them, they're trying to key in on the line of scrimmage, passing, uh, what else is there? Late hits. Well, late hits kind of easy, but like make
yeah,
sure the sidelines are cleared, sideline encroachment, all that, while at the same time they got 60, 70,000 Baton Rouge LSU fans, some probably drunk,
I'm about to say
just
that have been drinking all day, that have been in
yeah,
the sun.
screaming their heads off. Ah,
I mean,
I don't know.
imagine they finally have Alabama on the ropes or something, and then they get like a PI call that like almost costs them the game or something. Can you
Yeah.
imagine that? Like, can you imagine having to make that call?
Well, in the national championship game against Clemson, you and I talk about it all the time in
Oh, that pick.
2016. Yeah, the
Yeah.
illegal pick. Although I heard it's not illegal. I don't know. I'm still going with illegal. Imagine that. I guess the good part of it was they're at a neutral site and it was half and half. So half of the stadium was like, yeah, and the other half was
Yeah.
like, we're gonna get you refs. So
It's got to be tough. And I mean, I don't want to excuse horrible officiating because it can unfortunately have a huge impact on the game. So I
yeah,
like it whenever the refs are. I think the key for me is like a good officiating crew is consistent.
yeah, both ends.
Like if you're gonna call like in the NBA for example, if you're gonna call like a really strict game, do it the entire game.
Yeah,
So like the players know exactly how you're going to call this game, exactly how it's going to be officiated. No, don't let anything slide that you wouldn't, on both ends of the court. The same thing in football. I like
yeah,
it if a crew sets the tone in the first quarter. This is
mhm.
going to happen. We're going to get, or this if this happens, we're going to call it on you every time.
Well, when teams go to Cameron Indoor Stadium, at that
Okay,
point,
all right. Well,
it's not consistent. But other
hey
than
Brant,
that,
the refs
it's
just letting them play. I appreciate that.
oh, Jacob. That was one time a Duke player literally high jump kicked a Carolina player to the chest, and nothing was called.
Well,
Even the announcers reviewed it. They're like, "How was that not a foul? A flagrant?"
I fail to see the problem. I'm just kidding. I'm
I
just
can't
kidding.
help you.
I'm
I
kidding.
found I saw an interesting comment uh, on a football thing the other day, and it was talking about who will go undefeated, who wouldn't in the SEC.
Hmm.
Someone said Alabama. And someone was like, "I don't see Alabama losing." Another person's like, "I do." And then a comment came up and said, "Well, they play all their hard games in Tuscaloosa. They basically get away with murder there." I was like, "Do you watch the games? They get called for pass interference every 20 plays.
Yeah, I
What do you
mean,
think
but
of
in
that?"
in fairness, though, there are times where I'm like, okay, that was PI.
Well, yeah, for college, and I heard this. I don't know how accurate this is. I heard that if you don't turn your head around when the ball's coming to the receiver and you throw your hands up, they're going to call pass interference every time. And that's what our defenders do every time.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's such a frustrating and devastating call, though.
oh my
I mean,
goodness, is it
PI like on a
devastating?
3rd and 19 when they just throw it up in the air. It's basically like just don't foul them. But unfortunately, sometimes you are put in a spot where you have to because if you get beat
Yeah,
off the line, and then it's almost as good as it's just so deflating. It's awful.
I hate it.
But anyway,
Oh yeah, I mean, refing's got to be hard. In basketball, it's got to be really hard. How much
yeah.
contact is too much contact?
Well, it's interesting. I used to work with someone who did high school football or high school basketball games. And I'm trying to we're trying to work it out where he can come on and give his own account. So I won't give too much away here, but I basically just picked his brain for like several hours one day, just asking him a bunch of questions about it. I found it so fascinating. And he was giving me all these stories about what the fans do. It's high school basketball, so it's still pretty
Got to deal
intense
with
at
parents.
times. I mean, do what now?
Got to deal with parents.
Oh, for sure. And that was actually some of his stories that were the most intense were the parents. But some of the stories he told me made the hair stand up on the back of my head. And he said they called the police on people before and get them thrown out. I mean, crazy stuff that I'm just sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, it's like a whole different world is going on during the game that you never see.
Yeah, their view of the game is, "Am I going to survive today?" Our view is, "I can't believe they called that."
Yeah, and speaking of that, this kind of sent me down the rabbit hole, so I apologize. I saw recently on YouTube, I watched 2 or 3 videos on this. If you look at the MLS soccer channel, they have point of view videos from their referees. They'll post. They have like a GoPro or something on their chest, and they'll post like the highlights of the game basically from the referee's perspective, and you
Well,
can hear all the audio and everything. It's really really cool access that they give you. And I watched it for the MLS All-Star game when they played Arsenal,
ooh,
and the referee was trying to do his best to officiate a legitimate game, and gosh, it was so much more difficult than I thought.
who won that game?
I mean, like his perspective, it was basically, you had his perspective. The camera was on his chest, and some of the like fouls and stuff that he was calling, I'm like, that's probably a good call. That was probably a pretty good call. But like half a second he had, and a lot of times his view was obscured by other players or something. Such a difficult thing to do, in my opinion. And not only that, but you also got the access to hear what the players would like get up and start saying, whenever they all crowd around the referee and plead their case that it wasn't a foul. And a lot of them were like, come on, man, it's a friendly, it's not a big deal. And he's like, it's still a foul. I mean, you can't, I don't know. So it really did open my eyes again. I mean, like, this whole experience has been pretty enlightening for me. And there was one like penalty that he called. He went over to the monitor to look at the replay, because they can do that in soccer now, which is great.
Yeah.
And he went on the field and made his decision, and like half the team came up and was like, just tell me this. Was it the big guy upstairs or was it you? Was it the big guy upstairs or was it you that was making that call? He's like, we had a team of people review it, and that's what we decided, So, even the players are kind of difficult to
Like
deal
a
with, let alone
mob.
the fans. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why the MLS is getting all upset about that. They're not that great.
Well, this is like the Arsenal team. This is the Arsenal players.
Oh, well, who won that game?
Arsenal.
A little sidebar. That's pretty sad how bad MLS is. That just a Prem League could come in and destroy our
Oh
our
yeah, they've been
All-Stars.
doing that for years, though, man.
I know. It's just sad. They had Bayern Munich come in a few years ago who had Schweinsteiger on it, and they just ran roughshod over.
I will say the MLS All-Star team did beat Chelsea whenever they won the European League.
Well, that's something, I guess.
So that was
that's
pretty
the
cool.
All-Stars.
I know. It's still,
It's one single team versus our best.
Yeah.
Well, hey, with Messi here now, though, and he becomes an All-Star,
Yeah, that for sure
We
could be
have-
something different.
fighting chance. But on the referee end, it's high. Think about something like tennis. They have the 3 line judges. I think the line judges are on both sides that are watching. Then they have the what's his name?
The
The
umpire.
ref of the match. Yeah, or the ump of the match. He sits in the chair.
Yeah, the chair
I
ump. I
think-
think.
Think how hard that is. They got to watch the ball that's going like hundreds of miles per hour back and forth,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they
It's-
get the call wrong.
It's
so
funny
the
whenever you
players go
watch them
crazy.
though, because like I guess like all spectators, but their heads are like going back. And forth.
Yeah, it's like in the cartoons where you see them. Oh.
They imagine doing that for like 4.5, 5 hours on some of those longer games.
I mean, if I'm getting
And
paid well,
You have to be vigilant the whole time.
yeah, and you got to have fair calls because if you don't, the players lose their mind.
Oh, I've seen Djokovic. I've seen Rafa. I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of players like go absolutely
Serena.
nuts. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Serena was threatening one ump. I think that's correct. I could be wrong.
I'm sure that's happened. I don't know who's done it, but who's that like super famous tennis player that had a reputation for losing his temper?
Oh, John McEnroe,
That's him. That's him.
bad boy Mac.
Yeah. I mean, imagine like just being sat up in your chair and having this like net worth of millions of dollars professional tennis player come after you and question your judgment in front of everybody. That would suck.
Here's a fun story about John McEnroe that my dad told me. When you win Wimbledon, don't know if they still do this, but back when he was playing, the king and queen would invite you to their someplace. I don't want to say palace because I'm not quite sure where it is to have dinner with them. Well, John McEnroe won at Wimbledon, and he did get an invite, and the reason was that he was too off hinged or something like that. I was like, oh
That's funny.
my.
Oh my, that is funny.
But it's got to be a tough world being a ref, and those high paced sports, basketball back and forth on the hard floor, soccer, tennis court. I guess you're not going back and forth, but if you're a line judge, you got to stand like this the whole time.
That would be awful. I've always wondered that too. Like those kids and stuff, I guess they're volunteers.
I think the kids are, but the line judges, I believe, are. The kids are
oh
usually
yeah. The actual
the ball
officials,
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the people that stand at the back of each court, like like a soldier with their hands behind their back.
Oh, that would be
I'm like,
terrible.
that would be awful. You're doing that for like 6.5, and then you have to like sprint to get each ball, like dead ball that's on the court.
I always fear, like, what if I went to grab it and I dropped it and I had to pick it up again? Before you know it, I'm on the ground trying to pick up the ball.
and then like Rafa's just like throwing his towel in your face.
Unless you're a massive fan of Rafa, then you're like, oh, thank you for the towel, Mr. Nadal.
I know you would do that, but other people probably.
I would not do that. That's disgusting. I teach students. They come back from PE. I'm like, whoo, it's rough. It's rough.
But I did know one last note on this. The NFL referees have it pretty rough as well, but they are well compensated. I think I don't know how up to date the video was, but the video that I saw was like depicting their salary well in the six figures.
Oh, well, good for them.
And they work similar to, in terms of schedule, like a teacher. They work through the NFL season, and then they get a couple months off, and then they start watching film and stuff early spring for the next year.
That's not bad. So. Oh, I have thought of a call. I want to make sure I get this right. I think this is how it went. I'm pretty sure it's how it went. A few years ago, college football, the team went to go kick a field goal. They kicked the field goal. It was clearly wide left of the goal. Like, it wasn't even close. And after it missed the goal, the refs go like it was good. And it counted. They counted it.
What?
Yes.
No way, dude.
And they showed it on SportsCenter, like, can you believe this call? I was like, are you serious? It was like the Ohio State kick against Georgia. But they're like, it's good. Like, those refs have to be blind.
I will say that, like, the public opinion on referees, I mean, as despicable as it is, it just sort of was reaffirmed when I was going through the rabbit hole and kind of watching all these videos and content. Because the number one comment on the NFL referee documentary was like, number one thing required to be an NFL referee, be legally blind. Second thing, be extremely incompetent. Third thing, and I was just like, oh my, and it had like thousands of likes and thumbs ups and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, this is what they have to deal with on a yearly basis.
Well, these are the same people who would not call. I guess it's, excuse me. It's like, you got to be unbiased. So you can't be a fan of either team. And all these people that make these comments are fans of a team. Like, oh, that's a terrible call.
Yeah.
But if you're on the other team, you'd be like, that's a great call.
Oh, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And on that point, the last thing that I wanted to touch on as it relates to this topic is the interviewer from the SEC referee, or from his days in the SEC. He talked about the process of becoming an SEC referee. And he said the background check that they did was the most extensive background check you can possibly imagine. They have to report violations, like if they get a speeding ticket, like within the last 10 years or something like that, and everything in between. They go through all manner of like where you worked, who you know, everything, because I guess they're trying to eliminate bias. So, I mean, he said it's truthfully like the most extensive research background, however you want to say, weed out process you've ever seen.
So it's psychology.
Yeah, I guess so. So I mean, it's just like we think that people are just kind of plucked out of nowhere and thrown in here, but apparently it's incredibly extensive as to how they get the job. And the NFL is even more so strict on that kind of thing. So it's not just something you wake up and you decide you want to do one day. You have to start at the very bottom, and if you're good enough, you get to rise up. You get to
Rise up.
rise up through the ranks and get to the higher
Whoa!
levels. But like I was wondering if somebody who was, I don't know where he was born. I don't remember where they said he was from, but I was wondering if like you grew up in SEC country, if you wanted to become an official at the collegiate level, Division One. I don't know if they let you referee in the SEC. They'd almost certainly like move you to the Big Ten or the Pac-12, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Like I don't think an Auburn graduate would ever become a referee in the SEC. That makes no sense because if someone found out that one of the staff members was an Auburn Tiger, then even just the perception of bias is enough to influence gambling and other things. And obviously, that seems incredibly dubious, and it seems like a conflict of interest and everything else. So,
yeah. I was thinking of that SEC official Tom Ritter. I was seeing where he was. It doesn't show, but the first thing that pops up is a petition that says ban SEC official Tom Ritter and his crew from officiating another Auburn football game. That was in 2015, and the picture has on his hat an Alabama A cropped into it. And
I
this
mean,
got
there is like
2,600 votes.
2,600 signatures.
Yeah. I was trying to
Yeah.
see where he's from, but it didn't say.
I mean, there is some banter and whatnot that's hilarious and that's fun and that involves referees. But I just think a lot of times it goes way over the top.
Yeah. The whole,
But that's
how
just,
much are they paying the refs?
yeah, but
I
that's just
know
my
some
opinion.
people.
But
You know the yellow man, Yellowwood? Oh, what's his name? The owner of Yellowwood. You know what I'm talking about? It's in like Abbeville and whatnot. You see
yeah,
the
that
Yellowwood
big
plant.
old plant.
Yeah. The owner, who I have interviewed by the way for the news, very cool guy. Um, he is an Auburn grad, and there's some people, I won't name any names, believe that anytime something good is happening for Auburn, Jimmy Raines, his name, Jimmy Raines. They're like, I wonder how much Jimmy Raines paying those officials. Like, are you kidding me? Because he's like one of the richest people in America, I believe, or was at one time. Certainly in Alabama. But yeah, he's an Auburn grad, and when stuff goes well for Auburn, like the Cam Newton, I wonder how much they paid Cam from Jimmy Rain. Like,
Now, I had
they did
a
pay Cam, but
this
still,
may open up a can of worms, and I hope I don't get anybody in trouble by saying this, but I had a marketing, a sports marketing professor who was making a joke, but it was one of those like wink, wink, nudge, nudge jokes where he was
uh,
like, he's like, you think Auburn benefited from the investment they paid Cam Newton to come to this school? Absolutely, they did. I was like, should we be saying that out loud? Did that
well,
actually happen?
Charles Barkley said the same thing. He
Yeah.
said, "We paid Cam. We ain't gonna lie about it."
He's like, our professor was very blunt about the fact that that was one of the smartest investments the school has ever made.
That was back when you and I could not stand Auburn.
Yeah, that was a rough year.
I went to the Iron Bowl and saw it live and make that comeback. It was rough.
Yeah, I saw the cam back. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah. Even though I'm an Auburn fan now, I still hate that game. I will never be. I'm not proud of that 2010 championship. Nope.
I
Nope. Not today.
I mean, I don't claim it. Certainly, I was on the other side wholeheartedly at that point in my life. But I will say that I had a lot of friends who were very much in the Auburn camp and all long time, lifelong Auburn fans. And I remember that game vividly because I was talking a ton of trash
You're the reason we lost.
I was in part, I'm sure, because I put a lot of bad karma in the air. As soon as we went up 14-0, I was texting my friends who were Auburn Tigers, all kinds of just trash. And then at 21-0, I kept going. And then it started to happen. It started to happen, and I started to think, uh-oh. I went dead quiet, and then they won.
We were up 24. I was there. It was cold. We were up 24-0. And I remember everybody around us celebrating. And I went with my mom. We were in the student section somehow. Well, I digress from that. It was my first student section experience. And I looked at her and I said, this game's not over. Just because we're up big does not mean anything. And like you said, then it happened. They scored at the very end of the first half. And I thought, oh. We only scored 3 points in the second half, and they scored 21.
Yeah, it was a horrible experience.
Hurts. The game hurts. I'm still a Bama fan, but I mean, people who know me know how I do it. At the Iron Bowl, whoever benefits the most from winning is who I go for. And if they both are undefeated, the home team's who I go for. Everybody calls me crazy. But
I tend to agree with that assessment, but as it relates back to that one particular game, you know how that story you had when you got up and you left your PlayStation whenever you just got up, turned it off because that guy was screaming at you, and you just turned it off and walked away.
Battleville, yeah.
Yeah. That was my experience. I saw what happened. My phone literally just started blowing up because everybody was texting me back that I had talked trash to for the past hour and a half. I just turned my phone off, got up, and walked out of the room. I didn't turn on my phone for like a day.
In 2008.
I was like, not going to do it. I was at a family vacation at Universal at the time, and I didn't turn on my phone for like the next day and a half.
I don't blame you. 2008, similar experience. And I was on the other end of it. I was the winner. It was against Georgia, and my high school buddy at the time, huge Georgia fan, and he was talking trash to me. He's like, remember last year we beat you in Tuscaloosa? Remember on that touchdown in overtime? I was like, yeah, but we're going to win this year. And we went in there and stomped them. I mean, that was the last blackout they had because we beat them so bad. And I tried calling them. It rang once, and then it went to voicemail. I was like, it was awesome.
I think one of my favorites is what was the year that Alabama opened up with USC in Dallas?
2017, I believe.
And they were talking a bunch of trash, and Colin was going on about like, this is going to be a close game, folks. This is going to be a lot closer than you think. And then they just got smashed.
Snoop Dogg posted a video. We coming for you in Alabama.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was awesome. And then they get smoked.
There's a funny video. It's funny you bring that up because I saw this on Facebook today. There's reels that show from Instagram on there. And one of them, it said, remember when USC came out doing this only to get stomped by 44 points? It was that game. And pre-game, they're coming out of the locker room like, oh, hold us back.
I just remember everybody wanted Alabama to lose except for people who live in Alabama. But it was truly a great day.
Seeing Snoop Dogg's video afterwards, it was great. Like, we ain't ready. We ain't ready for them boys in Bama. Just laughing. Yeah. Welcome to the SEC.
Yeah, it's just different. I'm trying to think of like some more really standout games
where that happened.
There's Washington in the Final Four one year.
Yeah, but
it wasn't like a blowout per se. It's like 24 to something. I think.
Yeah,
24 to 7.
Who was talking trash about that?
A lot of people were thinking like, don't Alabama sleeping on them. There wasn't as much of a rumble about that one as the USC game, but there were some people that were thinking this is going to be a dark horse.
Clemson 2008, the first game.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Where we blew them out of the water. They
That's a
thought, I
really good
remember
one.
at school, Auburn parents like, y'all gonna get smoked by Clemson. I was like, I don't know, maybe. And then we reversed course on them.
The Ohio State Alabama game, the most recent one with
Oh, was it? Oh, what's
who
his
was
name?
the quarterback? Fields.
Did he die? Is he the one that died?
No, he's in Chicago.
Justin Fields?
Yeah,
Well, who was the quarterback that died?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Dwayne Haskins. That's who it is. Remember him?
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was. He died on the highway.
Oh, I do think I remember that now.
Was he the quarterback then, or was
No,
it
no,
Fields?
it was Justin Fields
Okay.
because
People
it
were
was
talking
Najee
trash.
Harris's last game with us or with Alabama before he went pro. Because he had a really good game. That's the only reason I remember that.
Ah, that's. I'm surprised. I do remember them saying that OSU belonged there. Even though everybody's like, you only played 7 games, so why do you get to go? And then we smoked them. Now in that game, their cornerback, I believe it was their cornerback, one of them, before the game, they asked him, "Who do you want to cover?" He said, "You already know." Talking about Devontae Smith,
Hmm.
and Devontae Smith ate him alive. His draft prospect went from like top 5, it dropped tremendously.
Mm.
Oh, what was his name?
That is unfortunate.
No, it's not. You talk the trash, it happens.
Well, I meant like that's unfortunate that he was ignorant enough to talk trash about Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper.
The Slim Reaper. What was that guy's name?
Well, while you look
Oh,
it up, I have one more game to reference, but this is from the Auburn side. And as typical Auburn fashion, it's full of disappointment. I will never forgive the team that lost to UCF. That was one of the most
go on.
despicable, egregious losses that this school has had in recent years. That team, that was the same UCF team that had a parade because they went undefeated in the regular
They
season.
beat Auburn.
They weren't able to qualify for the national championship game just based on their strength of schedule. And then they were talking a bunch of trash saying we would beat anybody you put us up against. You know how they do. And Auburn was the one to silence them in the bowl game. You had one job and you couldn't do it. It was the most frustrating thing to see them validated based on their nonsense. And Auburn, in typical fashion, let everybody down. And it was very sad. Am I wrong? Did you not feel the same way?
No, I agree. It wasn't the most disappointing for me. I have one that's more so, but I would probably say that's the second most disappointing
Well, let me hear your most disappointing. See if I agree.
because of how it happened. We should have crushed UCF. We beat Bama and Georgia that year, the 2 teams that played in the national championship.
Oh
But for me,
yeah. I forgot about that. That was that year.
this is my most disappointing Auburn game. This was the first time I had ever pulled for Auburn. I never thought I would, and this was before I went to Auburn. This was 2013.
Oh, is
Auburn
it?
versus FSU.
I was about to say, was it the FSU game?
They went up like 21-3 or something. 21-3. And they lost that game. They
Yep.
should have destroyed FSU. They should have. And they did not. They choked. To me, that was the most disappointing. I look back on that championship loss, and that one does hurt me. Even though that was the kick 6 year, I pulled for Auburn in that championship. I hated the kick 6. But in that championship, I was like, Auburn, you got to beat FSU. They did not do it. They
That
ended the streak of SEC
that
dominance.
was a horrible loss. I remember vividly in that first quarter, they had a wide open pass that was overthrown. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy was in so much real estate, you couldn't see any. Well, I may be misremembering a little bit, but I don't remember seeing much of any FSU defenders in the area. and they just overthrew it ever so slightly. But it cost him 6 points because he just would have walked into the end zone had he caught it. And they ended up losing. That was the team with Jameis Winston and Kelvin Benjamin on it for
Yeah,
FSU.
and Kelvin to me was good. Jameis Winston, need a W. He was
Winston.
that's K State. That's close. To me, he was kind of like a semi better Johnny Manziel, but I thought he was bailed out mostly from the conference he played in. Because at the time, Clemson wasn't good. It was just
Yeah.
FSU, and we saw the next year in the playoffs they got destroyed by Oregon, and Auburn should have won that game. There is no they just they got beat, but you're up 21 to, and it was 21-3. I'm thinking of you're up 21-3. You got to close that game out.
I agree.
Right.
I totally agree. That was. I still think UCF was worse.
Well, I say the Georgia game that year, the SEC championship Georgia game, where Auburn would have won, they would have gone to the playoffs, and they got absolutely hammered.
Well, I mean, in fairness, like beating them at Jordan-Hare Stadium was kind of fortunate.
I don't care.
I mean, it was. It's like, okay, yeah, you got them. We got them at home. We played well enough to win. They were a little bit off their game.
Yeah, but we crushed them 40-17.
I know, but like we had a few things go our way. It wasn't like I didn't walk away from that game thinking that would happen if you played them again.
But then we also beat them, or they also beat. They also beat Alabama at home.
I know, but I'm just saying that was a decent, which makes it even worse that they lost to UCF. How does that happen? How does that happen? I don't understand.
Here's UCF's schedule from 2017. Let's see.
What was the final to that game?
It was 34-27. They played Florida International.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 games canceled. 3 games canceled. Hallelujah. They played Maryland, Memphis, Cincinnati, East Carolina, Navy, Austin Peay, SMU, UConn, Temple, South Florida, and Memphis again. Only one team on that schedule was ranked, and that was Memphis at the end of the season. And Auburn lost to them.
Inexcusable.
And now they claim that they are the winners of the 2017 national championship, even though nobody gives them credit for it.
Yeah. So that was the most egregious loss that I've ever seen. I will also say, like, one of the biggest games, just real quick, that like did not live up to the hype at all was the FSU Alabama season opener when it was like 1 versus 3.
That was great. I loved it.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then their quarterback, Francois, or whatever his name was, got hurt. And people were talking about like the Colt McCoy situation again.
They were getting hammered.
Yeah, I know. I was like, well, that's a little bit different. The team was actually getting smoked at the time.
Have you heard the rumor or story or conspiracy, whatever you want to call it, that Colt McCoy intentionally went out of the game in the national championship so he wouldn't get exposed by Alabama to hurt his draft stock?
I did not hear that.
That is a theory out there, a story out there I've heard, that the reason he left the game wasn't because he was actually hurt. It's because he was afraid of getting exposed by Alabama. Or he didn't want to get actually hurt, and follow the draft.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's true. It doesn't matter. Y'all still would have lost. Get over it. You weren't stopping Ingram and what was his name? Oh, what was number 3's name?
Marquise Mays?
No, that was the receiver.
I think that was a later team.
Who was the running back? It was Mark Ingram, and this guy didn't pan out at all in the NFL. Oh, my goodness. I can see him.
Let's look it up real quick. I'm drawing a blank myself.
I know he was number 3.
somebody in the
That's
audience is like screaming his name at the moment. We're drawing a bit of a blank, so we're going to look it up really quick.
let's see. It's showing everybody but that freaking running back. There's Mark. I know it's Mark Ingram. Who was the other guy?
Yeah, that was his. Wasn't that Mark's Heisman Trophy year?
Yeah, it was. And they kept saying, "Oh, it's gonna be like USC in 2005." You
You
know,
know what's weird? I oddly remember exactly where I was whenever my dad texted me that he won the Heisman Trophy, which is kind of odd.
I remember where I was when Henry won the Heisman Trophy. We were heading home from Birmingham for something. I was riding with my dad, and it was nighttime. And I don't know how much you know of going up to Birmingham, like the I have landmarks in my head that I know. It's like this little shopping area before you get to Birmingham. I don't know what it's called, but we were passing that, and they announced Derrick Henry winning it.
My favorite Heisman Trophy winner though was Devontae Smith, because you didn't think he was going to get it.
Oh, Bryce was the other one. I keep forgetting Bryce. Yeah, Devontae was to me the coolest one.
But like he so deserved it, and he is such a beast, and he's doing great in the NFL.
He is. He's my favorite. I would say Mark's my other. So I love them all.
I mean, I love them all, but I'm just saying like that one meant the most to me because I just
Trent Richardson. That's who it was.
Trent Richardson. Yes.
Bryce, if he didn't get hurt last year, he would have won back to back. He had almost better stats than Caleb Williamson, and he was hurt. So,
What could have been? What could have been?
Yeah, well, Bryce couldn't win the big one.
But that's okay. He's still a beast. I'll be rooting for him in Carolina this year.
Yeah, I'll pull for him. Mac Jones.
Mac just got to pull it together this year. Otherwise, he's going to be.
He's on the hot seat.
Otherwise, he's going to be the used to Mac attack, the benched Mac attack.
Well, last year when he was hurt, the guy that came off the bench was playing really well.
Yeah, they went like 3-0 or something like that.
Yeah, so there's a little. I think what really kind of hurt him in this respect is he got too arrogant. The minute he became drafted, he got Mac 10 like trademarked for him because he's number 10 and his name's Mac. So Mac 10 like the submachine gun.
Yeah, I mean he played unbelievably well that season for Alabama. His wideouts had, I wouldn't say everything to do with it, but they were pretty good in their own right. So
what was Jerry Jeudy, Jameson? It wasn't Jameson. It was
Devontae, the Canadian that I can never remember the name of, number 8.
Was it the white guy?
No, I forget his name. He was their Canadian player though, and I can't remember his name.
Let's see. We had
Henry Ruggs III.
Henry Ruggs, Jared Jeudy.
I think actually Henry Ruggs is in prison. I think.
Yeah, from driving drunk.
Yeah, something horrific.
Devontae Smith, and whoever that number 8 was.
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to look that up real quick.
Julio Jones.
No, it wasn't Julio Jones.
He was number 8 and 10 years prior. We're just reaching out there, Jacob.
John Mechie.
Mechie, that's right.
Yeah, John Mechie III.
I mean, a beast receiving core.
Yeah.
Beast receiving core.
To be sure. But anyway, Brandon, do you have anything else you want to add? We're kind of closing in on that hour mark.
Texas is back, folks. No,
we'll see. We shall see.
I think Alabama's being a little underappreciated this year, which is fine. They do better like that. I think Auburn, and this is not just being an Auburn fan, because I'll tell you how it is. The last few years when we had Bo Nix, I was like, we're not going to do good. Where Brantley was, right? But I think this year we have a lot of momentum going in. We're landing flipping 5 and 4-star recruits.
Yeah.
I think the excitement's there. The excitement is there, and I think Auburn's gonna have
Thank you,
a
Lord.
good year. I think they're gonna have a pretty good year.
Yeah, I'll give you my take on that in the weeks to come. We're actually writing an episode right now about our college football preseason takes that'll air in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that, and I'll give you more of my thoughts in that episode on Auburn. But I was super excited that football season is just around the corner. I am so excited about it. There's so many teams in both the collegiate level and NFL that I'm super excited to see play. A lot of changes in the offseason have occurred, and it's always an exciting time when you get to see the new draft, the draft picks take the stage for the first time, as well as veterans who have changed teams. So very much looking forward to it.
Is there.
Yeah, it is. I'm hearing it loud. And a lot of Robert Tilton jokes as well. Apologies for that, but Brantley and I are cursed men, so they're just going to have to bear with it.
Jacob, you've gotten worse over the years.
I know I have, man. I told you it's gotten bad. But anyway, thank you all for watching and listening, rating, subscribing, all the things. We greatly do appreciate it. And I would also like to add real quick, and Brandon, I'll give you a moment to plug your personal channel. But Brantley and I have started personal YouTube channels. Mine is centered around more of my passion for gaming and chess. I'll leave a link to that in the description of the YouTube video and on the show notes of each episode for moving forward. If you're interested in checking out that kind of content, head on over. I think it's good. I try to put a lot of time into it, and Brantley has been doing great work himself, and I'll kind of let him explain what he's been doing too.
Yeah, to top off what Jacob said, his videos are spot on. Good. Because if you like chess, you like Hearthstone, stuff like that, and I know, Jacob, you said you're going to add other stuff.
Yeah, eventually.
Moving forward. But to me, they're in-depth, and I enjoy that. For my YouTube channel, I was going to go gaming, but lately I have rekindled my passion for opening Pokemon cards. So I also have a channel, and on there we'll be doing what I said, opening Pokemon cards. So there'll be a link in the description. Jacob's YouTube, I believe, is a Ghost Host. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a Ghost Host. It's my online gamer tag. It's what I've been going by for a long time. So all one word. It'll be in the description, as I said. I think, Brantley, Mr. Mew is what you've been going by.
That is correct, Mr.
On YouTube.
Mew.
So search for us on YouTube, or again, just follow the links in the description. We greatly appreciate any support you would leave us on there. We've been enjoying it a ton. We've been having a lot of fun collaborating and giving ideas to one another, and we're just seeing where it goes and how it goes. And so far, we've had a great deal of fun with it, just like this podcast. So thank you for all the support on everything that we've been up to. We greatly do appreciate it. But other than that, I guess I'll sign out here. As always, God bless everybody. Thank you so much, and we'll be back next week. Peace.